guys, well today I have something so exciting because I was able to see Moulin Rouge on Broadway. We went to New York City a couple weeks ago. We saw it. It's only been open for a couple months, and actually the cast album just came out today, the day that I'm recording this. So I'm feeling extra inspired to finally sit down and put together my thoughts from this show. So I will preface this by saying I am not a real theater critic. I'm more like when Homer Simpson was a restaurant critic. I just loved everything. So I'm not really gonna talk about, you know, the quality of the singing or the acting or anything. It was all really cool. What I can tell you is just kind of my thoughts about the show, and if you're interested, I've already done a similar listing of my thoughts about the musical Frozen on Broadway, which I saw last year, so I'll put a link to that as well if you just like hearing random people's thoughts about Broadway shows. So I'm actually a pretty big Baz Luhrmann fan. I've seen all his films. I actually did a whole project on him for a film class. So I feel like I'm very well versed in his world. I'm a big fan of Moulin Rouge. It came out during my formative years. I actually thought it had come out while I was still in high school, but I must have just graduated when it came out. So I definitely remember it being a big deal, going to see it. So it's one of the few movies that I have on video and I've seen multiple times. So definitely I'm kind of a bigger fan of that movie. So my first thing that I will say in talking about the Broadway version is it is not the movie. There are many differences between the movie and the live Broadway show. So it was definitely like the visual spectacle that the movie was, but it didn't have that same like frenetic energy that the movie achieved through lots of like quick cuts and zooms and different things. You can't do that when you're sitting in one place watching people on a stage. So I think they did the best they could, like staging wise, to keep up a level of energy, and it's just a different kind of energy. It was definitely a very high energy show. There's so much dancing, singing, action, there's lots going on, definitely. So I really don't know how they kept up that energy level for 2.5 hours. Also the sets and the costumes were really beautiful. I had done some reading and viewing of videos following the show. I didn't really do too much prior to the show as far as like learning about it. I did watch one of the preview videos that came out just to learn that it existed, but I didn't really do too much research, so I saved that for afterwards. And so I did learn about, you know, all the effort that went into designing the sets and designing the costumes, and you could definitely tell, I mean, they were very detailed and intricate, layered, the sets and the costumes. So I think they really fit the mood and the overall theme of the show as well. I know one of the things that the set designer said was that he really wanted people to feel like they were in the Moulin Rouge environment, like from the moment they entered the theater, and you really do. I'll put in some pictures of the theater, but I mean the whole place was decorated. There's actually like premium seating that you can get as your seat for the show. That's more like a cafe table right up in front of the stage, where some of the action actually happens like around you on a little runway walkway. So you definitely feel like you are part of the show, like you are the audience at a cabaret. And even from our cheap seats up in the balcony, you still felt like enveloped in that environment. There's also a lot that they do, again, kind of coming off of the stage. So with that walkway, they have different things in like balcony boxes and things that come out. So it's not just restricted to the flat plane of the stage. So music-wise, like I said, they do diverge quite a bit from the film. There are definitely a lot of the same songs that are in the movie, but a lot of them have been remixed with other songs, both, you know, newer music that's come out since 2000 or 2001, which it was kind of funny noticing like, oh, this song wasn't even written yet when the movie came out. But they also even go back further in musical history, again through some of the stuff that I was reading after the fact. You know, they reference different like jazz musicians, so they definitely expanded the overall like range of music that they do incorporate into the show. So I did kind of sit down after we saw it while things were still fresh in my mind, and I made myself just a little list of like things that are different. They're not bad, but they're just things that are different that I kind of, you know, wanted to make note of. So one of the things is that the show within a show that was pitched to the Duke as an investor was like a very depressing, somber French tragedy play, which that was a little disappointing because in the film it's like an Indian-inspired storyline about a sitar player and a princess, and that seemed more kind of appropriate considering the popularity of like Asian and Indian influence in Europe at that time. You could see still like the way that Satine's room in the elephant was decorated. It was more of like the Indian influence, and so it was just kind of weird that that was the only place that that was worked into the show, and not in any of the other music or show that went on within it. Another thing that was kind of different was the absinthe scene. So in the movie, they drink absinthe as like a celebration night, and in the Broadway show, they're almost doing it as a punishment. They're trying to like get Christian drunk to keep him out of trouble, and keep him away from Satine. The green fairy shows up in the play, but it's actually a hallucination of Satine, and I was really waiting for a green fairy to come down and be like, I'm the green fairy. So that was something I wanted to see that I didn't. There was also kind of an unnecessary romance between the narcoleptic Argentinian and one of the dancers in the show. It seemed like they kind of just worked it in as an excuse to like fit in one other song or make another song more appropriate, but it really never came up again that they were a couple, so that was kind of just odd. It was like a storyline that was introduced and never resolved. They also really spelled out Satine's whole backstory in detail instead of sort of leaving it to the imagination as far as like what she had been through in her life. They really got very specific about where she came from and what kind of situation she was in before she was working at the Moulin Rouge. And I kind of wish that they had left more to the imagination because it sort of like sullies your opinion of her, I feel like. A lot of the show was kind of more about theater and Satine's love for the theater and performing and her like dedication to her art and that whole artists and theater community, and she was sort of like, you know, let me do one last big show before I die. So it was less about, I felt like, the love actually between Satine and Christian and more about her love for the theater and performing. You know, everyone knew she was sick. I think in the movie, you know, people didn't all really realize she was sick. In the play, everyone knew she was sick, and everyone was like, you know, rallying around to help her put on one last show. But also I can kind of see, you know, since it is a Broadway show and everyone who's involved with this thing is a theater person, they will probably really love that it is like a more theater-focused storyline. So I can see how it's more popular with the audience that it's playing to right now, but that was a little different than the movie. And then one other funny thing that I kind of noticed was they used the word spectacular a lot in like the promotional materials. There was a whole wall outside the theater that had you know, quotes from different reviewers, and it just pulled out the word spectacular from all of them. The song Spectacular Spectacular is not in the show at all. I don't even know that they say the word spectacular necessarily. The song that they use to pitch their show within the show to the Duke is called So Exciting. So it's kind of weird that they use that spectacular term a lot, but unless you are already familiar with the movie, you probably might not get the reference. So those were just like some little things that kind of bugged me about it. Again, being of the generation where the movie was my first exposure to this story, I'm sure new people coming up now who maybe start with the play and then go back and watch the movie are going to be disappointed in the opposite direction. But there was definitely, I mean, a ton of especially women in my age range there at the show who were singing along, you know, talking at the intermission about like they better do Tango Roxanne during the second half, which they do. But I mean, there were like a lot of fans of the movie there, definitely. So everyone seemed to go away happy. Even though in the end someone dies, you do definitely leave on a high note. They make sure of that. I will show off my one little piece of confetti that we collected that fell on me at the end of the show. So just spoiler alert there. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of like Moulin Rouge film super fans. Actually, when we were standing outside waiting to go into the theater, I was saying, you know, what a big fan I was. I was very excited when I heard this musical was coming out because I wrote a paper on Baz Luhrmann for my film class in college. I'm a big fan of that movie. Saw it when it came out, saw it many times, own it on video, which is very rare. I don't usually get movies. It is on a VHS tape, so that tells you how long ago I bought it. But yeah, big fans. I'm very excited. As I was saying this, the girl in line in front of me kind of casually took off her like outer layer shirt, and she had a whole sleeve tattoo of all Moulin Rouge imagery, you know, the windmill, the man in the moon, the L'Amour soda sign, and I was like, oh, never mind, she is a much bigger fan than I am. So there are definitely a lot of fans there, and I think also there's now a lot of people who maybe had seen the show previously, you know, while it was off Broadway or being developed, who are going back, and so, or even have just been following along with the show and kind of know like what songs are in it. So it's definitely like a really fun atmosphere. They kind of, you know, they encourage singing along or clapping along at certain points, cheering. There's, again, a lot that kind of extends past the stage and into the audience area more. So it's definitely a really fun show. Even though it's a tragedy and it ends sadly, you still leave on a high note. It was really fun. I do recommend it. Again, I'm the Homer Simpson restaurant reviewer of Theater Review, so I can't tell you about the acting or the singing. It all seemed great. The dancing was fabulous. The energy was high. Super fun show. If you're a fan of the movie, definitely check out the musical. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful. And leave me your comments below and let me know, have you seen the show? What did you think? Are you looking forward to it? Would love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.